Welcome to Women Plus We've Been Waiting For, conversations on wealth, power, and social change, where we have been unpacking what has not been working in philanthropy and impact investing, and really what are the tremendous opportunities we have today to do things better. We've got another exciting guest with us today, Sergio Garcia. Zeku is also your stage name. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And really quick, a big thank you for creating this platform to be able to give people a voice. So a big shout out to you. A big shout out to Katie, who works behind the scenes. So thank you. Thank you both for giving me the chance to come on.
Thank you, Sergio. That's really, really nice. And I have to say, I'm so sad because we both live in Miami. You are a professional athlete in the world of dance. I love dance, but I still can't believe that we haven't met in person. And I'm so grateful that we could make time to have this very important conversation together. And I just wanted to highlight for our audience out there that, Sergio is a very inspiring and impressive professional athlete in the world of dance, particularly in breakdancing. And he recently founded a great dance studio and school here in Miami called Breakin' MIA. And, I know from what I have seen and read that you have been such a powerful force in the overall community here in Miami that, we were just really excited to unpack this conversation with you today around philanthropy and dance. So welcome.
Thank you.
And Sergio, maybe, before we dive into my questions, tell us just a little bit more about your journey and who you are.
Okay, so quickly to try to kind of get everything into one short story. What inspired me to start breaking was a movie called You Got Served. That's what inspired me. There's a lot of things in the middle of that whole entire process, but to make it short, I got inspired from watching that movie with one of my closest friends who still dances with me till this day. His name is Fusion. We started dancing the same day. We became obsessed with the dance that same day. And the reason why that movie had such a big impact on us, which is crazy how it goes full circle, they were actually doing a dance battle for, I believe it was $3,000, maybe something like that. And we're these two little kids from the hood who don't have anything. We probably just ate a cup of ramen noodle, $1 something maybe. We're struggling. So we see that and we're like, man, you could do a dance battle and make $3,000. That's insane. We never heard of that. So we started training. We love dancing. We never knew that. So we were breaking before we knew it was called breaking, before we knew that there was any specific music for it. It was just movement that naturally came to us. So when we saw the movie kind of connected everything, like, oh, it's called breaking. This is the type of music. There's a scene for it. There's people who are just as crazy as we are that want to learn how to dance like this. So we started dancing from there on out. And I became extremely obsessive with the dance, extremely. I used to play basketball, I used to play other sports, but there was no music involved. And music is what gets me moving. The moment I wake up, I'm playing music. When I'm just hanging around the house, I'm playing music. When I'm working at Breakin' MIA, there's music playing throughout the facility because it's what moves me. It's what keeps me going. And then from there, a lot of great trials and tribulations happened, some great, some bad. And I got into the space of being a sponsored athlete. And my first endorsement deal was Monster Energy. Again, there's great stories in the back, but this one. So I get sponsored by Monster Energy. I'm 18 years old at this point. I started dancing when I was roughly 12, 13 years old. So a little bit late to the unpopular opinion. And I go back to one of the spots that I first started to train at. It was called a Grapeland Water Park. And it was just this little park in our neighborhood. And I was practicing there and I'm thinking like, oh, this is it. I'm wearing a Monster Energy hat. People are going to look at me completely different. I'm a professional athlete at this point. It's like 8 o'clock and I think the park is closing and they come by and they're like, hey, you can't be here. You're trespassing. And I was like, well, what do you mean, man? I'm practicing. I'm a professional athlete. And look, I'm sponsored by Monster. And he was like, hey, kid, that's great, but you need to leave because we need to close the park. And that moment to me was, wow. I was like, wow, this is not this doesn't make me feel like a professional athlete. This doesn't make me feel like I'm endorsed by a multi-billion-dollar company. This doesn't make me feel that way. So that's where the story of breaking MIA comes around. All that money that I had received from Monster made me go, yeah, I can keep this and maybe invest into a property, or maybe, you know, go into something that's going to be lucrative a lot faster than me going and opening up a dance studio. But I felt like if I didn't do it, then I'd have to wait for the next person to come around and do it. And I knew that I had the leadership skills to be able to try and pull it off. Just give it a shot. Just attempt. If I failed, I failed, but it was worth giving it the shot. And we're 4 years in now, and we're still standing. We made it through a pandemic, and we're here. We're here for the long run. So it's great. It's become a safe haven for the dance community. We've been able to get so many job opportunities. All of the kids that work there, they're all kids. They're all under 21 years of age. It's great. 2 of them just got sponsored by Monster, so it's been beautiful. It's kind of, I'm like a proud dad right now.
No, it's amazing. And, you know, I have to say, I mean, following Breaking MIA online on Instagram, you know, I'm always so inspired by what I see. And myself being someone who loves dance, I feel like there's so much foundation and connection to music and culture that comes from breaking that it's such a phenomenal style to have open to all. And I feel like we can see kind of the energy and the intention you had behind that space when things are showcased around Breaking MIA. And it's such a perfect pivot into our conversation today because, you know, Sergio, a lot of the conversations we've had, and granted the show is called Women Plus, you know, it's not saying that we're only talking to women. Obviously want to build a community that has both men and women in it that are supporting each other. So we've had a lot of conversation with male allies, and you're definitely a male ally. But in the conversations we've had, we've been exploring the following theme. You know, we know that over the past 2 to 3 decades, there has been an incredible accumulation of wealth around the world. During the pandemic alone, billionaires added about $1.9 trillion to their wealth. Simultaneously, there are great needs in the world. And while philanthropy has been a great bridge in ensuring that we can use resources to address a lot of those needs, there's a lot of gaps as well. And the industry hasn't been all that it could be. You know, we're toiling around with, or playing around with a theme of billionaire. There's a better way to be a billionaire. You know, we're having these conversations. So from your point of view, as someone that has strived to really create a difference for the community through dance, tell us what philanthropy means to you. And then I have another question for you.
Yeah. So I think that there's been a shift now. Well, like you mentioned, I feel like a lot of high profile people, a lot of people who are blessed enough to have the income that they have, I think a lot of them have been, which, so I have to give them their props where it's due. I've seen a lot of people get more into the philanthropy space. One of the people who like stands out to me, who's been doing it a lot more frequently, is Mike Tyson. You know, he went from being somebody who couldn't control his money whatsoever, actually had somebody controlling his money, to now he's boxing to be able to, you know, boxing at the age that he's at. He looks phenomenal, but he's doing that not for his own income or for his own financial benefit. He's actually donating that money, you know, to where he donates it to, I'm not 100% sure, but he's really been pushing the envelope on being a philanthropist and not being focused on helping other people. So I think that once you get to a certain space where you're making this insane amount of cash and the insane amount of income, there's 2 switches. Either you're going to strive and get more because you're just not happy, and then now this is no longer an income problem. This is a mental, emotional problem where, you know, you should be chasing happiness because those numbers are never going to end. Or you're going to realize, I have more than enough for me, my family, and all those around me. Let me share some of this wealth to help other people. You know, Tupac said it best in an interview where he was like, people have private jets, people have houses with 12 rooms, and there's people that don't have a single plate of food. They don't have shelter, they don't have clothes, they don't have food. So I think it's important because you can change one person really can change the world. one person really can't change the world, and not necessarily in the fact of that one person is going to financially take care of everybody. But if that one person at the top starts to give everybody the financial education and what it really means to be rich and wealthy, that can start to seep down the pipeline, and start to impact more people.
So I really want to build on that. That's great, Sergio. And it really dovetails into a conversation I had with our friend Sanja just yesterday, where we were talking about how, in this world, you could get all the, promotions, be a CEO, be a best-selling author, have, all the money in the world in the bank. You could be a superstar on stage. But if all of those goals are not fueled by things that genuinely make you happy and are reflective of the self-work you've done inside, at some point, none of it will matter. So, it goes back to what you're saying. I mean, at some stage, is this all about ego, or is the intention truly to utilize these resources in a way where you're going to make the world a better place? And, I mean, I certainly would say once you've accumulated that level of wealth, you have a responsibility to make the world a better place, especially in light of climate change, the global water crisis, hunger, and so forth. And so, in terms of bridging that to the world of dance, what would you say are two things in philanthropy today, the way it looks today, that need to really shift for philanthropy to have a greater impact for the dance community?
For the dance community, I think that right now, the main issue that I've seen is that I've already seen a lot of this income and a lot of this opportunity go to people that are just connected. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's being given to the right person. Mind you, everybody should get the opportunity to do what it is that they do. But I think that I've seen a lot of income go to people who are just starting out, a lot of people who have probably never even dipped their feet in the water when it comes to, building a space. And a space doesn't have to actually be considered an overhead, but this can be done at your house. This can be done anywhere, as long as it's safe and it's an environment where everybody's welcomed. I think that the opportunity needs to be a little bit more analyzed and recognized before given out to just anybody. There's a lot of studios during the pandemic, and this is just studios. We're just talking studios right now. There's a lot of studios during the pandemic who were staples in the community. I mean, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, all around the world, that closed because they didn't have the opportunity to receive income to be able to stay open. And we look at these facilities as if they're just facilities, but these facilities have jumpstarted some of your favorite dancers' careers. They've jumpstarted it right there and then when they were 8 years old, dancing in the back, So I think that there needs to be a little bit more of an analyzation before it's kind of just given out, to be able to be like, hi, I donated, I'm a great person. It's, yeah, you donated it, but who did you donate to? What happened to that money? I think there needs to be a track record of all these things, of what's happening, where it's going to, who is it impacting, and what's the result of it. Because a lot of the times we don't trace it back. If you notice, people go, yeah, but they donated this to such and such. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. You don't always hear, what did they do with it? What happened? How much went to what? If you got $1 million, 250 went where? 250 went elsewhere. We're okay with the action of it. We don't really care about the result unless we're right there in it. So I think a more detailed report and a little bit more information would make it a lot easier for us to know where things are going. What are the results, and if it's going to the right people.
So here's what's super interesting, Sergio. So what I'm hearing from you is that as it pertains to philanthropy and dance, there needs to be more sophistication. There needs to be more criteria, standards, so that we're really making sure we're being thoughtful as to how resources are being utilized, where those resources are given, and what sort of impact we're trying to have. And what's so interesting, because I hear you, and absolutely, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what's so interesting is that in the realm of social change, particularly, I mean, in the work that I've done, right, around the global water crisis. And
You've done great. I've heard nothing but great things about what you've done. And somebody needs to interview you on this podcast if they haven't yet, because you are a bad woman. Let me tell you that. You are a bad woman.
Well, thank you. But it's about you. So what I was going to say is, often the challenge we have, or that we've discussed, is that philanthropy has become too top down. So there are too many people trying to micromanage a process, which inherently blocks our ability to have a greater impact. But I think this is marinating with what you're saying. So, a suggestion that we've highlighted, and I've certainly seen this with some philanthropists who are highly impactful, is the following. Nobody is saying don't do due diligence, right? Go out there, look at the organizations, look at their financial history, look at their philanthropic history. What have they done? What have they achieved? Do as rigorous as possible of due diligence. But once those organizations have met the due diligence criteria, philanthropic funding in a way where there are lots of strings attached. So imagine you meet a funder who has looked at all your financial records at Break and MIA, has looked at your strategy, your trajectory, your impact over the past 4 years. You've done a year's worth of due diligence with them, answered all the questions, passed all the tests. And then that funder comes back and says, well, we'll provide a $100,000 grant, but X amount of that grant has to go for the desk at the front desk. Only this amount of money can be used for this type of dance class. Only this type of money, only this amount of the grant can be used for this and this and that. It limits your potential as a leader to say, let's just focus on the fact that with $100,000, I'm pretty convinced that we can make these big picture impact in the community, and we will report on that and we will deliver on that. How we get there needs to be flexible and innovative.
Yes.
So I can be as impactful as possible. How does that resonate with you?
I read something the other day that was posted on social media, and I try my best not to read a lot of things. A lot of the things that I read are nonsense, but I did see something that said, we don't need any more professional dancers. We need professional dancers who are professionals. And the reason why people do come into, like we're speaking dance alone, people do come into our niche community and kind of start to run game, for lack of a better term, on what we do, is because we're looked at as if you give us just $100, we don't know what's going to happen. What we're going to do with it. It's not our fault. We just come from a community that's not financially educated as much as we should be, which is growing, and conversations like this are essential to that growth. But these big corporate people come in and they feel as if, their years at Harvard or Yale, wherever they graduated to, is what is valid and what is the okay, and that we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to the business side of things. When you have already corporations like one of my mentors from Break Free, his name is Moy, who has a $1 million dance company that he just has dance schools all around the US, and it's called Break Free, and they're doing a great job. And all of this is managed, and it's through them, fully integrated through them. It's a team that he's built from scratch to where it is now. I believe they're on 11 years. So I think is also proving to these grant givers, or whatever they're called, and letting them know, like, hey, we do have the creativity and we do have the heart and the mind to be able to put this funding in the correct places, because we know this better than anybody else, because we're the ones that either have been in that position or have been around the situation to be able to know what's impactful and what's just going to be put to waste, because at the end of the day, dance is really an outlet, a freedom of expression. And this is just the honest truth. A lot of people who dance or are dancers, a lot of the times they've been going through stuff, or they go through stuff. These are people that they're very special people. Dancers are very, very special people. And just like any other sport, any other outlet, there's a certain way of connecting with these people. There's a certain way of impacting them. There's certain needs that they need to be able to do what it is that they do. And a lot of the times it's not really just the financial need or hands-on, but the actual education and knowledge that you're giving to them for them to then go build their own thing or continue to pursue what it is that they're pursuing. So again, that goes back to giving the opportunity to the right people, putting it in the right hands so the right work can be done.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so great. And, we've got 1 minute left. I told you 20 minutes is going to fly by, but so just a couple of things to recap what you said, Sergio. So for philanthropy to be more impactful, particularly in the context of dance, we do need to create more sophistication, more standards, just an understanding of how these types of resources could really elevate the community as a whole and really be steered in organizations, studios, and individuals that are going to have the greatest impact. Simultaneously, that does mean, keeping the door open to having flexibility, to leaving room for innovation. So, we're still having a conversation around how philanthropy needs to be less top down and micromanaged and more focused on what's the impact per dollar invested. The final piece I'll weave in, and I'd love your thoughts, is, Mackenzie Scott, an incredible philanthropist who, for the first time, injected a lot of resources in the dance community and institutions that had been underfunded. If she was hearing our conversation today, or anyone who's thinking about their philanthropy in the context of dance, what are 2 things they could do today, Sergio, to make a difference?
I think that she's done a great job. I think she's done a great job, and what she did over in New York was extremely impactful, and not only impactful, but inspirational. I feel that maybe a lot of other philanthropists saw that and said, oh, wow, maybe this is a market that we can actually help out as well. We didn't know it was still there. That's what I hear a lot. We didn't know it was still there. I think if they were hearing it today, 2 things that they can take away is just that, yeah, let us have the creative freedom to be able to impact our community in the ways that we know should be impacted, and let's work together. It doesn't necessarily mean, give us the opportunity and kind of just vanish and post it on Instagram that you did something today, but help us out. You guys have the education to be able to also guide us in the right direction, to do the right things the right way. Because again, as we all know, it's not just kind of giving out money. There has to be a record behind it. Where is it going? What's the impact? All those things, which surprisingly enough, people don't really know the structure behind it. So it's more of working together rather than trying to own it and, again, micromanage it in the way that you understand because you come from a certain world, or that we don't understand because we come from a certain world. And overall, what we talked about at the beginning, you've reached enough. People need some help, and it's important that we share what we got, because at the end of the day, where we all end up, we can't take nothing with us. You can't bury us in cash, you can't bury us in cars, you can't bury us in luxury and luxurious materials, but what you can bury us is in a clean conscience, beautiful and positive thoughts, and an amazing legacy that you leave behind. Whether people remember it or not, you do, and that's what's important.
I love that, Sergio. That's a great place to end. I'll just weave in one last thing, which is dance is such a beautiful art form and sport. Breaking made it into the Olympics. We haven't even had that conversation. It's going to have to be part 2, but I will definitely say, as an entrepreneur who's not a professional dancer, but loves training with professional dancers, it has done so much for my mental well-being and sense of creativity. And I just would hope that more people could benefit from it, and just really appreciate your thoughts. We will follow up. Thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you so much, Alix. Appreciate it so much. Thank you for the opportunity again.